Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining the University of Surrey's Glimpse into Tech, a BAME Experience event. This event has been organised by the Surrey Business Society in partnership with the Surrey University of African Cultural Society, ACS, and the Association of British and Chinese University Student Society, Abacus. I'm Asini, and today I'm joined by a panel of 4 speakers from Microsoft to give you a glimpse into the tech industry from the perspective of an ethnic minority individual and to equip you with the knowledge and guidance you need to crack the industry. So without further ado, I welcome our panelists, Kemar, Kenya, Zeph, and Anjana. Thank you for joining me today. I'm so glad to have you on this panel with me. So I'll start it off by handing it over to you to introduce yourselves. Could you please tell me and everyone on all of our audience your name and your job title, please? Should we start with Zeph?
Thanks, Asini. Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name's Zeph and I Chuck Widden, where everyone calls me Zeph. In my day job at Microsoft, I work in our Azure business, that's our cloud business, as the data business lead. And it means a couple of things. It means I look after our sales strategy and our marketing go-to-market. And also as part of my kind of extracurricular role at Microsoft, I'm also the chair of our BAME employee resource group.
Wonderful, thanks, Zeph. Kenya, did you want to go next?
Hiya, thanks for having me, first of all. I'm so delighted to be speaking with all of you on the call. My name is Kenya Mackenzie-Jones, and I'm a digital strategist, and I work with public sector customers to help them deliver their digital strategies.
Wonderful. And Jana?
Thanks, Asini. Hi, everyone. So wonderful to be here. So wonderful to be with you all that I'm speaking with and everyone who is watching us or will watch us later. So my name is Anjana Srinivasan. I work as the Device Partner Solution Sales Lead at Microsoft. And what that means is we work with our device partners in the ecosystem, be they companies such as Lenovo, HP, etc., who produce these incredible devices that are powered by Microsoft software in some cases, such as PCs or servers and so on. And we work with our channel partners, our resellers, to help sell those through and empower the UK and Ireland populations to really be, to help them achieve their hopes and dreams through the devices that we provide for them. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And last but not least, Kamal.
Thank you very much, Asini. So hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Super excited to be here today. So my name is Kamar Davies. I look after the early in career recruitment for the UK at Microsoft. That means I look after our apprentices, interns and graduate hiring onto our early in career program. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all. So whilst you're all working at Microsoft now, I don't think any of you started your career at Microsoft straight after you left university, right? So could you each discuss your pathway to how you got to Microsoft in the first place? Should we go in the same order? So we'll start with Zeph.
Yeah, sure. So for me, it definitely wasn't linear in terms of the path. I didn't have any kind of grand aspiration to get into technology. I went to Aston University years ago, graduated in 2009. And back then, that's probably when the placement year wasn't super popular, but they had mandated it was part of their curriculum. And I just applied for placements, right? just wanted to get one. And I ended up getting one at Hewlett Packard. And I ended up working in their print division as an intern, working in the channel, just at the team that Anjana runs. So really understanding partners and how we take products through the channel, through the chain, supply chain. And I loved it. It was tech, it was print, even though it was like on the face of it boring, but just the excitement of the sales, supply chain, etc. Really did enjoy it. And then that just put it on my CV. So it was just on my CV. So naturally, post that, actually wasn't that simple. That was 2009. There was the big financial crisis. I was meant to go back to HP as a account manager role. It didn't happen. They cut loads of roles. I didn't work for about 6-7 months. Ended up contracting in an insurance company, and then from then was contacted by a distribution partner to do marketing. and I ended up doing marketing for Microsoft. And one day the guy, the Microsoft account manager, was like, "Hey, would you like to come to Microsoft to do a job?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." And that was about 7 odd years ago. And then since then, that's kind of my journey. So definitely not linear, definitely not kind of maybe your A1 type of, graduate, grad role, boom, boom, boom. So I guess just to keep that in mind for a lot of people who kind of maybe think that they have to do X, Y, Z, it's super formulated, that it definitely wasn't for me.
Absolutely. And I suppose you facing the financial crisis in 2008 is sort of similar to what we're going through now as students.
100%.
So
100%.
It's good to know that even if right now we're not going to get what we want to get in the future, it could be there for us.
Yes.
So Kenya, did you want to go next?
Yeah, so like Zeph, it certainly wasn't a linear process for me either. I grew up in an island called Trinidad, which is in the Caribbean, and I started off being something called an actuarial analyst, which is in insurance, and because I love mathematics. And I said, okay, I'm going to try to move to the UK for 3 months and see how I like it. 20 years later, I'm still here. And I ended up working in local government, actually, for most of that before I joined Microsoft. And about 5 years ago, there was a program called Digital Transformation. I thought, oh, that looks really interesting. I'm going to put my hand up for it. And I did. And I thought it was pretty cool. I got to do really groovy stuff with data and AI to manage things like homelessness and all that good stuff. And I came across someone in Microsoft who said, hey, why don't you apply? We could really use someone with your skill sets. And I said, well, I don't know. I've never worked in the private sector before. I'm purely public sector. All I know is local government. What could I possibly offer Microsoft? And they said, what you can do is, you have that industry knowledge, you understand the business, and you could translate the technology back to the business users. And that's a skill set I didn't appreciate that would be something that's really valued. So I applied for Microsoft. I said, okay, I'll give it a punt. And here I am 2 years later.
Amazing. Great. So Kamal, would you want to go next?
Cool. So I'm going to follow the similar bell. Mine also was not linear. I left university in 2008 during the financial crash, and I just wanted a job, right? Like I just wanted to earn money. So I actually started working in a retail bank, and I was there for 5 years, worked my way up to kind of management. And I got to a point where I was having to reapply for my job all the time because we were going through voluntary redundancies. And I thought to myself, do you know what? I want a job, like I want a career, not a job. So I went back and did a little bit of studying and did my HR qualification. And once I got to the end of that, there was a role that came up internally that I applied to, and I kind of fell into graduate recruitment. So I stayed there for 1.5 years, and then I decided I wanted to work somewhere else. So I went to Accenture, started looking after their technology programs, and that's when I really fell in love with tech, because what I noticed was I was working in banking before and we were seeing the same types of people coming in. But when you work in tech, you see lots of different people coming in. There are opportunities for all. And I kind of fell in love with that. I was like, right, I'm in a place where I can help everyone get a job. Like there isn't just one type of person who's getting a job here. So funnily enough, I went from Accenture and then I went back to banking. And then I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And I got a call from a recruiter who said, there's a role that's coming up at Microsoft. Do you want to go for an interview? And I was like, yeah, definitely. And I came all the way down to Reading from London, went to my interview. And then long story short, like I got the job. 3 years later, I'm here today. Not without like its challenges. So I did a stint where, I thought we'd lost the senior, but I think we lost someone else. Yeah, I did a stint where I came out of Microsoft and then came back 6 months later. And I've been back now for 1 year, made permanent, and looking after all of the programs in the UK. So definitely not linear, but I am here where I need to get to right now. Zeph, it was a 2-hour journey from my house, actually. Not Zeph said it's 45 minutes from London. It was a 2-hour journey, 4-hour road trip, right? In and out. Thank you.
Great. So Kima, you touched on how actually people in the tech industry are so diverse, and there are so many different routes in the industry. So I think that's a really good point to highlight at this point in this panel, because I'm sure that not everyone in this who's attending this event actually may think right now that they want to work for a tech company yet. So hearing that is definitely a great start. So, Anjana, I want to come to you now. So I know that you began working in India, and since then you've worked in multiple different countries around the world. So would you be able to touch on your journey and how you came from India to working in the UK for Microsoft?
Awesome. Thank you. So first, what I'll say is what I love about this conversation is that the squiggly career is the norm in this conversation, not the linear career, which makes me think that lots of people are actually having successful squiggly careers. And, we should talk a lot more about that. So I started in India after being trained as an architect. So, I thought I would go and become an architect back many, many more years ago. I'm closer to you, Kenya, than I am to Zeph and Kema in terms of number of years ago. I came out of architecture and got into an advertising agency. So I spent about 5 years coming out after being training for 5 years to become an architect to say, hey, let me go do something else. I have no idea why. I was 20, I was young, but that seemed like a really good idea back then. So I spent about 5 to 6 years in advertising, in sales, and I thought I wanted to work in fashion, as every girl growing up wants to work in fashion. I thought that's my place. But then I got a call from Lenovo back in the day, and I needed a job. I was working to keep my family, support them, etc., etc. I needed a job, so decided to go work at Lenovo. So I thought, I would work at Lenovo for a few years and then go get that job in fashion, but I ended up working there for 13 years. So, I think that you can say I became somewhat of a tech person, I think, since then. But what really kept me at Lenovo was that the realization that tech is the new consumer proposition in the way that it becomes so pervasive, right? We wake up with technology, unfortunately, in some cases, and we go to sleep with it, unfortunately, as well, but it's all around us and it's everywhere. And it just kept me really riveted, so much so that I'm really happily a tech person today, despite my aspiration for fashion back in the day. But I had a really good time. Lenovo was really good to me. I started in India working in the corporate team. I moved to the US and launched some really cool products for Lenovo. So I drove some global launches for Yoga PC, which, if those of you know the Yoga PC, was pretty cool. It's the first PC that decided to become a tablet back in the day. And it was really super proud to launch it. I worked with Ashton Kutcher to launch the Yoga tablet, which was another iteration. It was a really cool experience in my life to work with someone who's actually quite a tech aficionado and a tech savant, outside of being a celebrity. And then Lenovo moved me over to Hong Kong to work closer to their business groups and help really develop product as a marketer. And then finally, Lenovo let me move to London because my family were moving to London and they were super kind to me. So I've been super grateful and privileged to have really different experiences. And when Microsoft reached out, it seemed like the obvious next step. Having worked at technology, if you really want to scale and impact, Microsoft is a wonderful place and a wonderful brand that touches so many people. So it seemed like the obvious next place to come. So 1.5 years later, I'm here. And to Kema's point on this, I think this is a career for me as well.
Great. Thank you, Anjana. So evidently you've all had very extensive career journeys up until now, with lots of highs and lots of lows as well. Would you be able to pinpoint a standout moment for you within that journey? I know, Anjana, you've already touched upon some very cool things in your journey, but would the rest of you like to input onto that? So who'd like to go first?
I can go. I'll go. Yeah, there was probably 3 moments. I was speaking earlier, and I always say that, when you come into the right company, the right culture, it not only helps you develop as a career, you earn, you go around good people. It also helps you just develop as a human being, your character and your person, if you're in the right place. And there were 3 things. One, it was when I first started off in the organization, probably about, I've been in role for a year, and I was a kind of a junior business development manager, and a senior account manager I was helping him out an account, and he was like, I remember it was the 2nd of January, and I was in London with my family, and I was going to drive back up to Birmingham, and he lived in Reading, and he was like, hey, let's just meet up in the office on your way up. And then he just started talking about like, what's your next step for your career and all of that. And then I was just, I don't know, maybe this. And he was like, you could be an account manager. And I was like, what, me? I'm just some kid on the block, And he was like, no, you're good enough to do it. And to me, that was one of the, I really call it now, I kind of as borrowing someone else's belief. That was a big pivotal moment in my mind, not only as a career, but in my capability as a person. So that's a real moment for me. And then the other one that I would say was probably just in June. You were around the scene when we had a Akala for Juneteenth. And, there was a lot going on in the media around like George Floyd and his murder. And there was a lot of questions in all organizations, right? And sometimes, I was the chair of the BAME ERG. A lot of work was going on at that time. And, sometimes you feel like, what is actually the real undertone? Because you can't speak to everyone in the organization. What do people really care? What kind of a test of a culture do we have? And we had the Carla in for that event, Juneteenth. And I remember at a point when you're in the back with the producers, and then they messaged me and they said, you know what, Zeph? There's almost 1,500 people that are tuned in to this event. And then they said, this is the second highest ever attendance we've had on a live event in Microsoft. It's just behind some special town hall that we did with our CEO. And for me, that was a special moment to be a part of that, but then also to be a part of an organization that, was curious and cared and wanted to learn and understand more. So that was a real standout moment for me in my career.
Absolutely. And I think being there, watching you actually have this discussion with Akala whilst I was doing my placement at Microsoft. I mean, I could tell I was very envious, and I think a lot of people, all of those 1,400 plus people on the call were probably thinking the same thing. So that's a very good highlight there. Kenya, did you want to go next?
I think a standout moment for me was when I got involved in the project to help manage homelessness. And what we wanted to do is kind of find out what were the indicators of homelessness so we could intervene earlier before they got to that tipping point. And we used really clever things with data and AI around something called predictive analytics. And we'd never done anything like that before. And I had to read up on it beforehand to kind of just get myself familiar with some of the language and the things to consider on data sharing and things like that. And as I read more, I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. I just thought it was fascinating. I love the possibilities that you could do all these clever things to actually make a difference in someone's life, to actually say, hang on, if we don't intervene, if we don't do something with you now, in 3 months, you might be out on the street. And I just thought the power of data and AI, absolutely fantastic. So that's when I knew that this is something I want to get involved in longer term and I wanted to make a career of. So that would be my standout.
Great. Okay. Love that. And then Kamar, did you want to finish it off?
Yeah, I think for me, my standout moment is probably very personal. It was to do with when I was working in branch. So when I was working in retail when I just come out of uni, probably into my 3rd year when I wanted to kind of move into HR, I got told a lot of no's, and no's by people who are very senior in the organisation, basically being told that you're not quite good enough to get to where you think you're going to get to. And being able to be offered a job in head office in HR, for me that was one of my standout moments because it's brought me to where I am today. So like for anybody who is listening, sometimes you just have to ignore those no's, like have your own level of resilience, know what you want, keep going for it, because the people around you, they're not always on your side and it doesn't matter, right? So just always keep pushing, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I think, yeah, that was probably one of my standout moments. And then just being at Microsoft, the types of projects that I've been involved in, the stuff that I get to do within BAME, the fact that I get to use Microsoft as a platform to pursue my own passions all the time, like, it's amazing, right? So don't ever take no's, is what I would say.
That was great, Huma. It's really inspiring to hear how you pushed through despite all of this critique and all of these people who are going against you. As yeah, I think you're right. Sometimes you got to be the person to blow your own trumpet, right? Okay, so sometimes you could say that it's easy to look at someone's success, like all of your success, and forget that people didn't have an easy journey in achieving that success. As ethnic minority individuals, we have more prominent hurdles than others do. So at this point, I'd like to pivot the conversation, if I may, and ask you a question on a more personal level. So my question is, what barriers and obstacles have you faced? And Kima, you've touched upon one of yours already now. But for everyone else, and Kima, if you have anything else to add to that, what barriers and obstacles have you faced in getting to where you are today? And how did you overcome those? Zaf, shall we start with you?
Yes, you can start with me. I'll probably take two lenses. I think this goes back to, I'll always say this is my opinion, and it's predicated something that Kamal was saying earlier. If someone asked her a question about if you experience any kind of discrimination, how to handle it, and she talked about speaking up. And then if you're in an organization that doesn't let you you don't feel comfortable speaking up, then maybe you're in the wrong organization. I've always felt comfortable with the managers and the leaders that I've had in Microsoft and the culture that our CEO Satya Nadella has driven to be myself. We have a statement in Microsoft which is come as you are and do what you love. So generally within the organization, I've never really felt external hurdles and barriers. The ones that I have felt have probably become from my experiences pre-organization and from my experiences that come from the societal experiences or societal hurdles that I have. So when I think about hurdles, I like to think more macro about the hurdles that you come into organizations with based on your experiences that you've had before you enter that organization. So your experience that, hey, maybe I'm not as good as X, Y. Something Akala said really interesting today. Actually, we had another thing, and he gave the data point, and he said that typically, and he used example, I think it was Black African students or folks, they're the highest likely in terms of ethnic group to go to university out of all groups. He said, but then he said that when we're doing predicted grades, etc., they're the least or the most likely group of students that will get leveled down. So in terms of they're predicted, they're the most likely to get leveled down and say, hey, I don't think based on the teacher's opinion, you're going to get there. And you see all those things scale, like, I don't think. So you come into an organization, you have that mindset, I don't think, or whatever those things, you have that in your mind. And you've got to, I think Anjana said it, and Kamal said it, overcome those no's, overcome some of the mental things in your life. And if you've got a climate, a culture that empowers you, then you can push forward. So I think there's a lot of stuff that we need to do to try and address, like, what are those things that happen in our wider society that we need to address, and then making sure you don't bring those kind of burdens and shackles with you into the if the environment's good. And that would be my kind of answer to that question.
There seems to be a recurring theme here of needing to believe in yourself in these sorts of moments, and not buy into all the negativity that you might have faced up until where you are.
Because I think the scene, just on that, and I'll finish it off. If you're in a team, Anjana leads a big team, the first thing that she's going to want from her team, or she's going to look to, is that they deliver results. That's one of the core things that she's going to ask. And, if you've got someone that delivers results, you're not going to be too caught up. You shouldn't be too caught up in what they look like or what they sound like. What are they hired for? You want them to deliver results. And so if you're really focused on that, sure, there's other things, but ultimately good leaders, they're not going to judge you by all these other things. They want to judge you by the competency and your capability, and obviously something like how you fit into the culture, etc., etc.
Great. Thank you, Zaf. Okay. Anjana, did you want to go next?
Sure. I think, just to build on what Zef just shared, My personal experience started very early to try and fit into the stereotype of the Indian woman, right? There is, I think, I think that was my personal experience, but the societal expectation or the norm of what an Indian woman should do, what she should look like, what's expected of her, especially as I was growing up in India, in a small town, what's kind of expected of her by the time she's 25 was very different than the path that I chose to take, right? Had I gone with that, I would have been 25 with my first child and 29 with my second child, and the picket fence and so on and so forth, right? But when I chose to then do architecture and not an arts degree, because that would just get me closer to being available to get married, or then I chose to go and get a job in advertising, where back in India, advertising is potentially a new age profession, if you will. It's not one of those solid banking professions that is respectable and all of that good stuff. So every decision that I made was kind of debunking the stereotype. So it was not so much it was certainly my experience, my lived experience as I was going through it, but the fear that comes from not living a stereotype and what the society is trying to press down on you, or what you're trying to press down on yourself, because am I doing this right? Is this what I'm supposed to do? This is what I feel like doing. So there's a lot of self-questioning that kind of comes with that. So certainly I think that I got lucky that after I turned 28, my parents realized I'm probably not going to fit the mold, that they jumped on my bandwagon, and they were my supporters that I needed very much to go make some more crazy decisions, like leave the country and live alone in another country, which is 12 hours away from your country type of thing. That really helped. But, overcoming that was going through it was tougher in parts. And I think hopefully through what I did, at least for the people that I know, we created a playbook for it can be done in a different way. The playbook can look different. And I think that, I love to share this story, even just internally, or people that I meet with, because that's the power of this, right? Like there is a different playbook, you cannot do arts and you can do these other things. So, that's it. Yeah, that's my story.
That's a really great story. And I think it's great that you were able to really stick to your own goals and this final goal that you had set in sight. But you were lucky, it seems, because your parents were willing to believe in you and let you do what you wanted to do. What advice would you give to someone who wants to pave their own path, but perhaps those around them, like their parents, people who have influence, are not so willing to let them do that?
So my parents kind of got behind me when I was 28. So I'd made a bunch of, according to them, foolish decisions by then. Now they think they're really smart. But I remember I used to work for Discovery Channel, and they would be like, "What is Discovery Channel? Like, when are you going to work for Indian Bank?" I think, so first of all, it's hard. So first thing I'll tell you is it's super hard, because you're second guessing yourself constantly. And when things are not going well, there is a huge pressure to go back and do something that's familiar, that you'll have a lot more community with, with the people that you know. So what really helped me was I felt like I was making the right decision. And I felt like, people will come around. At the very heart of it, this felt right to me. Number two, I surrounded myself with a lot of people who are making similar decisions. So you do need community. And if it weren't my family, it was my friends at that point in time. And that really, really, really helped me. And I've made some lifelong relationships that I continue to this day. And then number three, I think you just have to persevere. It's so important to persevere, and persevere through not knowing is probably the hardest thing, but you have to persevere. There is no magic pill to, this turning around. But when it does turn around, it's amazing. It's beautiful. I'm living the life of my dreams today. And wow, I did not get there by saying so, that's it.
Yeah, so inspiring. I mean, it's much easier said than done to just persevere and push through, especially when people you're really close to are not so who aren't listening to what you want to what your achievements and goals are. So yeah, a huge credit to you for being able to do that. It's amazing. No, sorry.
And huge credit to some other women who opened doors before me, right? So we're standing on the shoulders of people who did this before us, and hopefully our children can stand on our shoulders.
Absolutely. So Kenya, I'll pass it over to you now.
So challenges, I think, or obstacles for me. I think for a lot of my career, I would say I would describe it as a bit of a square peg in a round hole, right? So I was very different to my peers and colleagues around me. And that could be on a number of different strands. Either I would be the only female on the team, the only person, with an accent, or the only working mother, or, any number of things, the only person with a public sector background. And I think I learned over the course of, the extent of my career, I think, to really flip that and use that as a unique selling point. So this package is what makes me me and what makes me different and what helps me to add my value. So I give that unique perspective that people who don't look like me, sound like me, have my same background would not necessarily be able to give. And that's where my added value is. And I made sure that I carried that forward whenever I was applying for a role or going for a promotion or whatever it may be. So my advice would be to those on the call, don't count yourself out or put yourself away from the table because you don't fit the mold. Use that's a unique selling point and leverage that to get where you want to go.
I love that. That's great. And do you have any tips on finding what your USP is, or does that just come with time and
yeah? So I would really recommend spending time understanding what I call your superpowers or your strengths, because in this market it's competitive, right? So you need to be able to demonstrate and articulate what makes you you and what makes you stand out. And we all have them. They're all things that come naturally to us that don't necessarily come naturally to other people. So for me, for example, I'm really good at creating clarity, taking a lot of information and distilling it down into 3 or 4 basic points and getting people to make a decision on that. And that's something I just kind of took for granted, but I realize it's not a skill that everybody has. And there'll be different skill sets that you all have that you're able to do better or quicker or more effectively than others, and just make sure that you're aware of those and you could leverage those, because that was what will carry you throughout your career.
Great advice. And finally, Kamal.
I was going to say, I want to be respectful of time because I think we're running till 7, right? And I know that the ACS team was 7?
15.
Oh, 15. Okay. So advice around barriers. If I get this right. What I would say is, when I think about what my journey has been into Microsoft, one of the biggest things is surrounding yourself with a community of people that can kind of lift you up. I know the day that I walked into Microsoft was quite a nervous and scared person. I didn't always want to talk up in meetings. I would sit in the back and kind of just listen. And the more involved I've been with, like, the BAME community, for example, they have really inspired me. On Juneteenth, I had the opportunity to speak to over 200 women about my journey as a Black female at Microsoft. And I wouldn't have done that if I wasn't inspired by the person who I call my work mum for me, because she pulled me out and asked me to do this. And by doing that, it gave me a level of confidence. I had loads of people messaging me afterwards. And actually, I thought my voice is important, but you need to surround yourself with people who are going to inspire you and give you that level of confidence. So I would say go out, choose your networks. At Microsoft, we've got some of the most amazing women. I mean, Kenya, you know that already. So me and Kenya normally do a weekly check-in just to check to see. So every Wednesday, we'll ping each other and be like, hey, Kenya, how's it going? Are you good? And I just have lots of people that I've met in Microsoft who I've been able to build relationships with like that, but it's inspired me, it gives me confidence. So I would say build your network. It's one of the biggest things. And you don't know what's going to happen, right? The role that you're doing today, you don't know where your network's going to end up. They might be helping you into your next role at Microsoft. So your network is very important. As they say, your network is your net worth, right?
It's interesting because I think as young people, we're constantly told networking is great, do networking because it's going to get you placed in life, it's going to get you jobs. But then people don't really highlight how networking also builds up the support system around you, like what you were just talking about there. So that's a really good point to highlight. Right, so that is pretty much all we have time for our formal panel. So thank you all for sharing your stories and your advice. These have been great, but now we're going to hand it over to our partners. So for this event, we have partnered with ACS and Abacus. And so today we are joined by the president of Abacus and the president of ACS, who are going to be hosting different segments of the Q&A. So we're now moving on to Q&A, and I'll pass it over to the president of the ACS Society, Mduka. So Mduka, it's yours.
And hello everyone, my name is Nduka. I am the president of ACS and I am a second year electrical and electronics engineering student. Initially I came here with 5 questions, but you guys have done well and have actually given me good answers for most of these questions. I'm just going to ask 2 more questions, and the first one would go to Kima, because I know that you're into the recruiting, university recruiting at Microsoft. So Kenya initially talked about finding your unique selling points, and I gained a lot of good advice in terms of someone who was already in the team. So let's say you're already working in a team in Microsoft and you're thinking, how do I advance my career? But from a student's point of view, what is the difference maker? Obviously, the different factors at that time, work experience, your grades, networking. What are the most important factors in terms of standing out as a student?
Okay, so one of the things I will say is that grades doesn't matter. It doesn't mean don't work hard at university. I'm not saying throw away your degree because it's very expensive. But in terms of like the grades there, like that's not the differentiating factor at Microsoft, whether you come in with a first or a 2-2 or 2-1. Our culture is built around growth mindset, right? So what we look for is these people who are insatiably curious. They want to keep on learning. If you can show that in your interview, if you can show that in your CV, that you're a person who likes to go out and find new learning experiences, we love that. Work experience, it is important. So if you can go out and get those internships, but we are also aware that not everybody has access to those opportunities. So it's about how you sell yourself on your CV. If you've got a part-time job in retail, that's great. But when you're writing out your CV, don't put a list of everything that you do in that retail job. I used to work in Sainsbury's when I was at uni, so I know exactly what a customer service assistant does. I don't need to know that you stack shelves, but think about the type of impact that you've had. What have you done? So if it's around your customers, have you done something to enhance your customers' experience? Those are the things that we look for, and that's how you kind of set yourself apart. And if you're wanting to work, so, I'm talking about Microsoft specifically. So if you're wanting to work in the technology industry, then convey your passion for tech. And by that means, are you taking again those learning opportunities to go and maybe teach yourself how to code or understand a bit more about our cloud business? Or is it around our culture? So just thinking about, what does Microsoft stand for, and do those things really resonate with you as a person, and then trying to convey that throughout your interview process or putting it into your CV or your final round assessments.
All right then, thank you, Kima. That was brilliantly answered.
Thank you.
That's it for me.
I think you had a question in there around STEM as well, right?
Yeah, I did. And that was kind of answered already through the course, but basically the question was for non-STEM students, what courses or skills would you consider crucial in order to, if you're looking for a job in a top tech firm like Microsoft?
Yeah, so I really wanted to highlight that question because you don't necessarily have to have a technical background or a STEM background to work in a technology organization. And I think a lot of the time people self-select out of the process because they're not studying computer science. Asini will tell you our placements, no matter what you study, there is a placement here for you at Microsoft. So if you're in your second year and you're doing a humanities like degree, please still apply. We've got business consulting, we've got sales. And what I love is that diversity isn't just about ethnicity or gender or age. It's also about your degree background. Like people from psychology degrees bring great skill sets to sales. So don't let that kind of put you off. And if you want to, when you get into the business and you decide that, you want to be more technical, we've got so many different learning pathways for you to get into it. So I just want to be really clear that no matter what you're doing, there is a place for you here at Microsoft. You just need to be intentional about that role that you're applying to.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Thank you, Kima. And I have one more question for Anjana, which is, so how much experience would you say how well did university prepare you for your current role in Microsoft? And how would you contrast that with skills that you gained outside university? So what other skills that you're using, what other skills that are useful for you right now in your industry did you gain outside of university?
Thank you. So first of all, I went to university a long time ago. So I have to take a second to remember. But I think the university or schooling in general does a number of things really well, which is, especially in India, which is where I grew up and did a bunch of my studying, which is really foundational knowledge across a variety of topics. What I studied was pretty academic focused. And, I use that every day. I used to wonder why I needed to know the level of math that we went through in school. But, 20 years later, I'm telling my son why it's important. I'm the wiser for it. Having said that, though, when you do have an environment which is quite academic focused, there's a few skills I think you really learn when you're on the job. And hopefully this is something educators start to pick up on and start to address, which is, number one, I think of it as creative thinking. How do you come up with unobvious responses to solutions? How do you come up with original thinking? How do you come up with different ways to solve a problem? How do you actively build that muscle? Because often you have a lot of success in doing things differently and challenging the norm and, being curious about why it needs to be done a certain way and so on and so forth. So, I really refined that skill, after university, I would say. A couple of other things that I'd call out is sort of, the muscle of orchestration or organizational skills. A lot of what we do is with and through people. Especially as you work in companies for a long time, how do you motivate people to bring their best to work? Obviously, the company culture is critical, but what you as a leader in whatever role you're in, as a project managing leader or a leader of an organization, how do you motivate and get work? Have a team that's motivated to deliver with and through people. And that's really something I think you learn outside of the university. So these are a couple of things. I think it's natural that these are kind of on-the-job experiences. The last thing I would say is communication. Which I think is so essential. Are you communicating succinctly, quickly, getting your point across? Are you not scared to put up your hand and say, I have an opinion? I never said it. 10 years of my life, I didn't do it. And then suddenly I built up that confidence to do it. So, having that school experience where you encourage that level of confidence and communication would also be wonderful. But I hope this helps you answer your question.
That wrapped it up very well. Thank you, Anjana.
Awesome. Thank you.
So that's it for me, guys. That's it for my questions.
Thank you, Mduka. Right. So now we're going to pass it on to Emily, who is representing the Abacus Society questions. So Emily is the president of the Abacus Society, and she has prepared. She has a number of pre-prepared questions ready to ask you all. So, it's yours.
Hi guys, nice to meet you all. So Abacus stands for the Association of British and Chinese University Students, and we're all across the UK in different universities as well. But my question is, what is the company culture like within Microsoft? What do each of you think, like, what kind of person would suit working at Microsoft?
I'm happy to keep. Oh, sorry.
Oh,
no, Kenny.
Yeah,
You
you
go, because I feel like I've taken the floor. You go.
There's a couple of different ethos I think that Microsoft adhere to and that I really love. The first one is the come as you are, do what you love one, right? So that really is about kind of, and I talked about this before, just presenting who you are, understanding your USP, and just kind of showing your true authentic self. And you do getting the opportunity to do what you love. Another thing that we're really big on is having that growth mindset. And in an industry like technology where things are changing all the time, you really do need to be able to kind of adapt and grow and learn different technologies and different trends as things progress, because by 5 years into the future, things might become obsolete. And that really sits well with me because I love to learn. I love to read about things like data and AI and how you could apply them. So they really aren't looking for a learn-it-all mindset. So to go back to what Kemma was saying, you don't necessarily need to have the top grades in a university, but you do have to have that appetite to be, what do they call it, a lifelong learner. Kemma, do you want to expand on that? Or?
To be honest, Kenya, I think you articulated it beautifully. I was just going to say, out of the places that I've worked in, Microsoft is the place that I feel like I can truly turn up as my authentic self. I'm not going to be judged on maybe what I look like and maybe how I sound. It's all about the impact and the value that I create. So I feel like I don't have to waste energy kind of covering or being somebody else in the workplace. My energy can be spent on spending time at events like this and bringing in amazing talent into the organisation. So it truly is that come as you are and do what you love.
Okay. I also have another question, which is to Kima. Can you talk about the power of LinkedIn? Do you, as a recruiter, look out for potential candidates on LinkedIn? And do you know any who do? And would you recommend people network using LinkedIn if they're interested in working for Microsoft?
Yeah, so I think everybody has their own individual perspective on this, right? So I recruit in the UK, and what we have in the UK is volume, right? So I am not short of a number of applications. So in terms of candidates sort of reaching out to me and asking me to look at their CVs, I unfortunately don't have capacity for that. Now, if I think about some of my colleagues who sit across EMEA, who recruit for some of the smaller countries, they use LinkedIn a lot more to go out and source talent. So it's balanced, right? It depends on what your challenges are, where you are. Now, if you're a student, you should absolutely be connecting with people. You should be, if you're interested in the tech industry, you need to be connecting with people who are in that tech industry so you can know what's happening. LinkedIn is a great source of news. I follow lots of people. But in terms of being recruited, it may not work out for you if you're just reaching out to recruiters and saying, hey, just look at my CV. So you need to be really intentional. But, there's organizations like Ambitions where, they have a platform where they can look at your CVs for you. And there's lots of other organizations that do similar things. So you can use LinkedIn to connect with those types of organizations to help you out on your career journey. But what I would say is be intentional. Don't just fling out the same LinkedIn message to thousands of recruiters and just hope that somebody bites. When I see messages like that, I don't even always respond. I'm going to be brutally honest. But if I see something that is well crafted and it is intentional, I will go back. I may not have time to actually sit and be with that person, spend time with them going through their CV, but I will actually go back and respond to that person. So my thing is be intentional about how you're talking to people, be intentional about who you are following. If you're interested in particular industries, then go out and look for the right people, look for the CEOs, look for the right news articles around that industry that you're interested in, but do it with intent.
Thank you. That was really good advice. Could you guys also touch upon what kind of advice you'd give for people that potentially lands an interview, and maybe just how to stay calm under pressure, or like how do you guys normally cope when there is a lot of pressure at work?
Should I go first as the recruiter? But I was waiting to see if somebody else came off with mute. My advice, so my best interviews as a personal thing have been the ones that feel more like conversations. If an interview is really hard and you feel like you're really being like grilled, it's probably not the right place for you. I don't think that interviews should be super, super hard, especially if you're being interviewed with the person that you're going to be working with, because it should feel more natural. But what I would say when it comes to being an interview, make sure you're well prepped. So understand the role that you're going for, understand how your skills align to that role. There's always a job, like there's always a list of responsibilities. So you need to be thinking about how does my previous experience align with the responsibilities that they're asking me for in this role. Then think about the cultures and the values of the organization. So you hear people here talking about growth mindset. Customer obsession is a big one for us. So in your previous experience, where have you been able to display that customer obsession? Where have you been able to display that growth mindset? And be prepared to talk about those in examples. And then also, turn up as your authentic self. Know who you are. If you're sitting in that interview and you're having to lie, if you're sitting in that interview and you're having to lie, the job probably isn't for you. Or if actually you've read through the kind of cultures and values and they don't align with you personally, again, it means that that organization isn't for you, and that is perfectly fine. When you're in the right place and you're having the right interview, you will know, you'll feel that match. And actually when you walk into that organization, it'll be built around, you'll be set up for success, is what I will say, when it's the right place for you. I know I've gone before I came to Microsoft, I'm not going to lie, I think I had like 8 interviews. I think in the end, I was just turning up to interviews, and a lot of those interviews, they weren't right for me. I think I was just going through the motions. I was walking out kind of knowing that I didn't want to work there, but I just wanted a job. And then when I came to Microsoft and I had the interview, I knew that it was the right place for me because the values aligned with my own values. And I knew it was a place where I could thrive, and I am thriving. So just, be intentional, think about where it is that you want to work, think about the cultures and values, and make sure that it resonates with you as a person.
Can I add 2 points to that? And I think it's a really important one that I just wanted to pick up on. The first one is around what you said earlier, Kemma. An interview is meant to be a two-way exchange. So you shouldn't feel like you're being grilled. This is your opportunity to find out about the company, and to Kemma's point, to find out if this is the right fit for you. So think about, you should always have questions. The bit at the end of the interview when they say, do you have any questions for us? You should spend a lot of time thinking about the kind of questions you would like to ask to glean the information that you need to find out. The second bit of advice I'd like to give is, even if you don't hit all the boxes in that JD, still apply. Don't count yourself out. And I think when you get to that interview, that's the opportunity to connect the dots for that panel to say, okay, well, I haven't hit criteria X, but here's what I've done instead, and this is how it can help you.
Thank you for your answers. Another question would be, what career development opportunities are there at your company? And how does the company kind of support you in your goals to move up in your career development or your career paths?
I can start, and then someone else can kick it off. You know, Microsoft's so diverse, right, in terms of the opportunity that you have to do. And when I say opportunity, I talk about geographic standpoint. It's a worldwide organization, so you can go and work in other geographies as well. And then when you talk about function, like Kamar said, you've got sales, you've got marketing, you've got engineering, you've got consultancy. Like, you can go across this span. And one thing about Microsoft is that they do look your network and your capability and in your goals and vision. And I always tell the story, you know, my current role is I work in Azure data and AI from a business perspective. And the role before that, I looked after the Surface distribution channel, which is our devices, Surface first party devices. Those are very, very different. And so a lot of people ask me, how did you do that? Like, you know, were you like some data and AI technical? And I'm like, nope. You know, and I say I was given a job in a coffee conversation in what we call the atrium, like in a reception bit with the leader of that business, because he was like, oh yeah, I think you got some skills that I need here, da, 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 and this person says that you're good, and this person says that you're good, so I think you can do the job, and this is what I need from you. You know, are you up for it? I'm like, yeah, oh, yeah, sure, I'm up for it. You know, that's the opportunity that I was able to cross from a discipline of partners and working with partners, working with hardware, to working to going straight to strategy, marketing with cloud and data and AI. So I think the opportunity and the world's your oyster. And then there's still more opportunity. Public sector. Do you want to work in public sector? Do you want to work in commercial? You think about deeply about industries. You can go work in a specific industry. A senior's working in education. You can go work in retail. You can work in, you can do all sorts of things. So I think that opportunity in Microsoft, as you start to understand what gives you energy, what do you enjoy, what you're interested in, what's your purpose tied into, etc., etc. Have those conversations, build out your network, speak to different people, find out what they do. You'll start to see that opportunity just open up and open up.
Do we have time for just a quick add-on to that? Awesome. So just building on what Zeph shared, I mean, the opportunity in Microsoft, wow, right? And I think that's the wonder of a global organization where, you know, you import over your skills and really build on your skills, right? And what I've seen that's wonderful at Microsoft is that there is a very intentional planning process around your culture, around your career, right? I'm blown away by how much, you know, by my first interview that I had at Microsoft, where the interviewer asked me, okay, Anshna, this is your first job, but what will your next job be? And I was blown away. I'm like, I'm interviewing for this job. And the fact that you're thinking about my next job is just amazing. And what I've really learned after coming is, how do I get quite precise around where I want to go next? How can I then create the networks on where I want to go next, and how can I get there, right? If there's a plan, there's a path. And just as much as I do it for myself, I'm encouraged to do it for every single member of the team. So there's a lot of commitment to not just making sure, you know, we're happy in today's job, but we're taken care of from a long-term perspective, and growth is a part of that plan. So I just, you know, such a wonderful practice. I thought it was worth sharing.
Great. So thank you, Emily, from Abacus. At this point, we're now going to open the floor to any questions that we've gotten from our live audience. So the question that I have is, right, so Zeph, earlier on, you touched upon your experience of applying, and Kemma also, you both touched upon this. You both touched upon your experience of applying to jobs during the global financial crisis. Do you have one tip that you could give to people who are watching who are in a similar situation on how they can secure a job at this point in time?
Yeah, and I was on something earlier as well. I was talking to a bunch of students around this. COVID-19, the pandemic, is makes it even more difficult for tons of people. And if you're a student here, I can only imagine what's kind of going in your mind, right? You see all these headlines, there's job losses, like, hey, I've just spent this much on a degree. What am I going to do? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Kind of similar to what happened in 2009, but I don't want to compare it because your example now is where you are now, and I'm not there. So if I reflect back on what was important, and it might sound generic and obvious, there's no magic bullet. I'm not going to say go here. What you have to do is you've got to keep doing the things to be prepared for opportunity. That's, to me, that mindset of always growing, always learning, because we're not going to be in a pandemic forever. There's not going to be a recession forever. Opportunity is going to open up again, especially in tech. In the data and AI business, we go and speak to customers about how can data and AI create new business models. Like, you think about the things that happened X years ago, it's completely different to the things that happen now. Today, I was on a call with an organization that you all know that deal with glasses. Okay, fine. Like, you can figure that out. And they were talking about, hey, how do we do eye testing virtually and online? All right, that's a new opportunity. That's a new business model, right? And that's going to create a new type of skill set that's needed by people that work there. It's going to create new opportunity for jobs, for et cetera, as well as the current in-person opportunity, whatever's happening. So, you've always got to be preparing. You've got to stay alert. You've got to stay in the growth mindset. You've got to be doing the right things, learning, like Kamar said. What's the course that you're doing? What's the people you're following? What are you speaking to? Because the opportunity is going to come back around. And if you're in that constant state of preparation, then you'll be able to grab it with both hands. So that's the advice that I would give anyone. It's not a magic bullet advice, but that would be my advice.
I think I just echo what Zeph said. Continue learning. This is an opportunity for you. If you can't find work, then you've got spare time. So use that spare time wisely. Think about being entrepreneurial as well in this time. Ideas are COVID proof, right? So you've got time to put your ideas into play, and keep the faith, right? So, again, it's nothing magic here. Keep applying, but again, be intentional about who you're applying to. Don't just send out loads of blanket applications. Think about, the types of companies that you want to work in, and hold the faith is what I'd say. But I know it's a difficult time, and we're well aware, but there are opportunities out of this.
I guess that ties in quite nicely what people say about there not being luck not existing, but luck actually being where preparation meets opportunity. Okay, right. So I think instead of asking another question, we can end instead on Kimar. Would you be able to touch on what placement and graduate opportunities are actually available at Microsoft in case there are viewers who are interested after listening to this talk?
Cool. So for the next 12 hours, so I'm going to leave it open because we've had this conversation and I want to be mindful if anyone is interested. So our graduate opportunities for customer engineers and cloud solution architects will stay open, and you can find those at the Microsoft careers site. And for those guys who are in their second year and thinking about their 12-month placements, those opportunities will be opening up early November.
Perfect. Thank you, Kamar. Okay, so that is all we have time for today. If you're a Surrey University student, please do remember to join the Surrey Business Society. If you've enjoyed this event, we've got more coming up, or follow us on Instagram. More importantly, though, thank you so much to all of our panelists today. Thank you for sharing all of your stories, your advice. It's been wonderful having you here with us. And thank you all for joining us in the audience too. So until next time, goodbye.